The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and intention. But what happens when something from beyond the stars arrives, something that doesn't answer to the Force, that bends reality itself through will and grief alone? What happens when a witch who rewrote an entire town's existence finds herself standing at the threshold of the galaxy's darkest necropolis? Wanda Maximoff fell through dimensions screaming. The Darkhold's corruption had consumed her world, twisted her into something neither hero nor villain. Just a mother, drowning in loss. She had dreamwalked through realities, hunting for versions of her children that could be real, that could be hers. Each failure carved deeper wounds into her psyche. Each closed door drove her further into madness. Then the temple collapsed. Wong's desperation, the mountain of Wundagore crumbling around her. She should have died. Instead, she tore. Reality itself ripped like fabric as Wanda's chaos magic exploded outward in her final moment of anguish. The multiverse bent, screamed, shattered. She fell through colors that had no names, past universes that flickered like dying stars, until something caught her, a gravitational pull of pure malevolence that resonated with the darkest corners of her power. She crashed into red sand beneath a sky that churned with perpetual lightning. Wanda pushed herself to her knees, crimson energy crackling around her fingers instinctively. Her Scarlet Witch crown materialized, not the one from Westview's sitcom fantasy, but the true manifestation of her chaos magic, angular and sharp as broken glass. The air tasted wrong, electric, ancient. "Where?" Her voice came out hoarse. The landscape stretched before her in desolation. Jagged rock formations that looked like frozen screams, architecture that defied rational geometry, and in the distance, a structure so massive it seemed to hold up the turbulent sky itself. She wasn't in the multiverse anymore. This was something else entirely. The ground beneath her feet hummed with power, but not the familiar resonance of the Darkhold or the warm glow of her children's manufactured souls. This was cold, patient. It had been waiting for millennia. Wanda stood, her crimson cloak materializing around her shoulders as her magic assessed threats. Nothing living moved across the wasteland, yet she felt watched by 1,000 invisible eyes. The fortress in the distance pulsed with the same energy that had pulled her from between dimensions. A nexus of death so profound it sang to the necromantic abilities she'd learned from the Darkhold. "Show me," she whispered, and her chaos magic rippled outward like sonar, reading reality's threads. What came back made her stagger. Bodies. Thousands of bodies, but not dead, preserved in some state between life and death, suspended in machinery that predated any technology she'd encountered. And beneath the fortress, in chambers carved from obsidian stone, she felt them. Concentrated nodes of power so immense they warped the very fabric of this strange dimension. The dead who refused to die. Wanda began walking toward the fortress. Her boots left crimson footprints in the red sand that glowed briefly before fading. She didn't know this place's name, didn't understand the strange energy that permeated everything like cosmic background radiation. She only knew it called to the most broken parts of her, the parts that could bring back what was lost. As she climbed the first steps toward the massive entrance, statues of hooded figures flanking a doorway tall enough for giants. Wanda felt something she hadn't experienced since Westview. Hope. Terrible, desperate hope that perhaps in this place of concentrated death, she might find the knowledge to truly resurrect what she'd lost. Not illusions, not dream-walking into other mothers' lives. True resurrection. The doors opened before her touch, groaning on mechanisms that had waited decades for this moment. Inside, the darkness swallowed her. then ignited with green luminescence from crystals embedded in walls carved with symbols that hurt to perceive directly. Wanda's chaos magic flared protectively, casting crimson light that clashed with the sickly green. She was in a cathedral of sorts, but dedicated to no god she recognized. At the far end, a throne sat empty, and around it alcoves stretched into shadows. "Welcome, prophesied one." Wanda spun, energy crackling between her palms, ready to rewrite whoever spoke out of existence. Figures emerged from the alcoves, robed cultists in crimson and black, their faces hidden behind masks carved with languages she'd never seen. They moved with religious reverence, forming a semicircle around her but maintaining careful distance. "We have waited," the lead figure continued, voice distorted by the mask. "The Sith eternal endures. And you are the one who will restore the natural order." "I don't know what you're talking about," Wanda said, her accent thickening with stress. "Where am I?" "Exegol," another cultist answered. "The hidden world, the throne of the Sith. You have been drawn here by the dark side of the Force, as was prophesied when our Emperor fell." "I don't know what the Force is," Wanda said flatly, "and I'm not here for your prophecy. I'm looking for—" She paused, unwilling to show vulnerability to strangers. "Knowledge, resurrection techniques beyond what I already possess." The cultists exchanged glances she couldn't read behind their masks. "Then you have come to the right place, Witch of Chaos," the leader said. "For in the vaults below rest the preserved forms of the greatest Sith Lords in galactic history. Our Emperor kept them as anchors, as reservoirs of dark power, but we lack the ability to restore them to true life." The cultist extended a withered hand toward a descending staircase. "Perhaps you are the key we have sought, and perhaps what you seek lies in the forbidden knowledge they possessed." Wanda stared into the darkness below, feeling the concentrated death that waited. Vision's face flickered through her memory. Billy and Tommy's laughter echoed in her mind. She descended into the dark. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The staircase spiraled downward into bedrock that predated civilizations. Wanda's crimson magic illuminated walls covered in inscriptions that seemed to writhe in the flickering light, symbols that hurt her mind when she tried to focus on them directly. The Sith cultists followed at a respectful distance, their breathing the only sound beyond her footsteps, echoing in the confined space. The temperature dropped with each step. Not the cold of winter, but the absolute chill of vacuum, of entropy itself. Wanda's breath misted before her face as her magic automatically warmed the air around her body. She'd felt cold like this once before, in the moments after she'd murdered the Illuminati across universes, the cold of crossing moral lines that could never be uncrossed. "How far down does this go?" she asked, her voice swallowed by the oppressive stone. "To the foundation of Exegol itself," the lead cultist replied. "The Emperor built his fortress atop a vergence in the Force, a wound in reality where the dark side concentrates like blood in a bruise. It is the perfect place to anchor those who should not be allowed to fade." Wanda understood anchors. She'd used the Darkhold as one, tethering herself to forbidden knowledge across dimensional barriers. She'd made Vision into one, binding his consciousness to the Hex until she couldn't maintain the lie anymore. Anchors were prisons dressed as preservation. The staircase finally ended in a massive chamber that stole her breath. It stretched the length of several football fields. The ceiling lost in darkness overhead, despite the eerie bioluminescence emanating from tubes and tanks that lined the walls. But it was the center of the room that commanded attention, a circular pit perhaps 50 feet across, surrounded by machinery that looked like a fusion of organic growth and brutal technology. Steam or mist rose from the pit's depths, and within that vapor Wanda saw them. Sarcophagi, dozens of them arranged in concentric circles, descending into the pit's depths. Each one was crafted from black stone veined with red crystal, and each one pulsed with a heartbeat of malevolent energy that made her chaos magic recoil instinctively. "The Sith Eternal," the cultists said with reverence bordering on worship. "Lords of the dark side preserved at the moment of their death. Darth Bane, who created the rule of two. Darth Revan, who walked both light and dark. Darth Nihilus, who consumed entire worlds. Darth Plagueis, who learned to cheat death itself. And others whose names are written in blood across millennia." Wanda approached the edge of the pit, staring down at the nearest sarcophagus. Through the crystal veins, she could see a figure inside, tall, wrapped in ancient armor, face hidden behind a mask that seemed to absorb light. The body was perfectly preserved, no decay, no corruption, just suspended in the instant between life and death. Her chaos magic reached out involuntarily, reading the threads of reality woven around the corpse. What she found made her gasp. "They're not dead," she whispered. "Not completely. They're trapped, held between states by this machinery and something else. Something that permeates this entire planet. The dark side of the Force," another cultist confirmed. "It sustains them in stasis, prevents their final dissolution, but it cannot return them to true life. That requires a power we do not possess, a power to manipulate reality itself beyond what even the Force allows." Wanda pulled her magic back, unsettled by what she'd touched. The souls, if they could be called that, trapped in those bodies were nothing like Vision's consciousness or her children's constructed existence. These were predators frozen mid-strike, ancient malevolence crystallized and waiting. They dreamed in their suspension, and their dreams were nightmares that leaked into the Force like poison. "Why would you want to bring them back?" Wanda asked, turning to face the cultists. "What purpose does resurrecting your dead serve?" The lead cultist stepped forward and for the first time removed his mask. The face beneath was human, male, perhaps 60 years old, with burn scars crawling up one side of his neck. But his eyes held fanaticism that transcended sanity. "Because the Sith are the natural order," he said simply. "The Jedi preach balance, but balance is stagnation. The dark side understands that the universe trends toward entropy, toward passionate destruction and glorious rebirth. The Emperor understood this. He tried to preserve himself, to rule eternally, but he was destroyed by sentiment, by the weakness of caring for his own bloodline." The cultist gestured to the pit of sarcophagi. "These lords knew better. They embraced death as a tool, not an ending. And now you arrive, Witch of Chaos, pulled across dimensional barriers by Exegol's call. You command magic that exists outside the Force's limitations. You have rewritten reality itself. We can sense it in your very essence. The dark side brought you here for a purpose." "I choose my own purpose," Wanda said coldly, red energy crackling around her clenched fists. "I'm not anyone's prophesied savior." "No," the cultist agreed, smiling beneath his scars. "You are something far more valuable. You are desperate. You are grieving. You are willing to tear apart universes for what you've lost. We know this because the dark side knows this. It fed on your anguish across dimensional barriers, your buzz, and pulled you here like a riptide pulls a drowning swimmer." Wanda wanted to deny it, but the words struck too close to truth. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "Restore them," the cultist said, gesturing to the pit. Use your reality manipulation to complete what our Emperor began. Bring back the Sith Lords in true resurrection, not as clones or possessed corpses, but as themselves, fully restored with all their knowledge and power intact. Do this, and we will give you access to every secret the Sith discovered about conquering death. He produced a small pyramid from his robes, a Sith holocron Wanda would learn later, though now it just looked like an artifact pulsing with dark energy. Darth Plagueis discovered techniques to manipulate life and death at the microscopic level. Darth Nihilus learned to bind his consciousness to his armor, surviving beyond physical form. The Emperor himself transferred his essence across cloned bodies. All of this knowledge is yours, Witch. All the secrets of Sith immortality, freely given if you restore our masters. Wanda stared at the holocron, feeling its pull. Inside that device might be the answer. How to bring back vision without the Mind Stone. How to make Billy and Tommy real without the Hex. True resurrection, not illusion or desperate fantasy. And if I refuse, she asked, then you will never leave Exegol, the cultist said matter-of-factly. The planet itself is a prison for those the dark side claims. You felt it pull you here. Do you truly believe it will simply let you go? Wanda tested that claim, reaching out with her chaos magic to feel for dimensional barriers, for the weak points in reality she'd exploited before. What she found made her blood run cold. Exegol sat at the center of some kind of cosmic wound, a place where the normal rules of dimensional travel simply ceased to function. She could feel other universes out there, tantalizingly close, but the path to them was sealed by energies she didn't understand. She was trapped. How long do I have to decide? Wanda asked, hating the weakness in her voice. The dark side is patient, the cultist replied, replacing his mask. Explore Exegol, study the machinery, examine the lords themselves. When you are ready to accept your purpose, we will be waiting. The cultists withdrew, ascending the stairs and leaving Wanda alone in the chamber of the dead. She stood at the edge of the pit, staring down at the preserved Sith Lords, and felt the weight of impossible choices settling onto her shoulders once more. These beings were monsters. She could sense that much even without understanding the Force. Releasing them would doom countless lives across this strange galaxy. But if their knowledge could give her back her family. Wanda descended into the pit, crimson magic swirling around her like a protective shroud, and approached the first sarcophagus. The nameplate read in a language she somehow understood, Darth Bane. She placed her hand against the crystal surface and felt the dreaming darkness within stir at her touch. Show me, she whispered to the corpse. Show me how you cheated death. The body's eyes snapped open behind the mask, glowing with sickly yellow light, and Wanda's mind was flooded with visions of power that made the Darkhold look like a children's book. The visions hit Wanda like a psychic avalanche. She saw a galaxy burning across 1,000 years of conflict, crimson lightsabers carving through flesh, entire planets reduced to ash, apprentices murdering masters in an endless cycle of treachery and ascension. The rule of two, Darth Bane's philosophy, crystallized in her mind with brutal clarity. One master to hold power, one apprentice to crave it. Strength through culling, evolution through murder. Wanda gasped and pulled her hand away from the sarcophagus, stumbling backward. Her chaos magic flared defensively, crimson tendrils lashing out at nothing. Bane's eyes remained open behind his ancient mask, tracking her movement with awareness that should have been impossible for a corpse. You're conscious, Wanda breathed. You're aware in there. The body didn't respond, couldn't respond, bound by whatever technology and dark side energy held it in stasis. But the intelligence behind those yellow eyes was undeniable. Darth Bane had been trapped in this state for potentially thousands of years, aware but unable to act, unable to die, suspended in a nightmare of his own preservation. It was worse than any fate Wanda could imagine. She moved to the next sarcophagus, morbid curiosity overriding caution. The nameplate read, Darth Nihilus. Through the crystal, she saw a figure in tattered robes and a mask that resembled a screaming skull. Unlike Bane, this one showed no eyes, no visible flesh, just the mask and robes, as if the armor itself was all that remained. Wanda's magic probed carefully, reading the reality threads. What she found wasn't a body at all. It was a wound. Darth Nihilus had consumed so much life, drained so many Force-sensitive beings, that he'd hollowed himself out entirely. His consciousness existed as a hunger given form, bound to his mask and robes like a ghost chained to its grave. He was less a person and more a conceptual void shaped like a man. "What kind of monsters were you?" Wanda whispered. She continued through the pit, examining each Sith Lord in turn. Darth Revan, whose sarcophagus was split down the middle, half in light, half in darkness, as if his very preservation couldn't decide which side claimed him. Darth Plagueis, whose body showed evidence of violence, deep wounds across the torso that had killed him, preserved in the moment of his murder. Darth Malgus, Darth Sion, Darth Traya. Names that meant nothing to Wanda, but whose residual power made her skin crawl. And at the bottom of the pit, in the largest sarcophagus, she found him, Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, the most recent addition to this gallery of horrors. His body was in worse condition than the others, clearly damaged, partially decayed despite preservation attempts. The cultists had recovered what remained after his final death aboard the wreckage of his own fleet. Unlike the ancient lords who rested in peaceful stasis, Sidious's corpse seemed to writhe within its prison, as if still fighting against the finality of death. Wanda knelt before the sarcophagus, studying the face of the being who had ruled this galaxy through fear and manipulation. Even in death, his features held cruel cunning, and she could sense the echo of his consciousness. Not trapped like the others, but fragmented, scattered across this planet like shrapnel from an explosion. "You tried to transfer yourself into another body," Wanda said, reading the residual magic. No, the Force, clinging to the corpse. But something went wrong. The vessel was destroyed before the transfer completed. She understood the technique now, could see how Sidious had attempted to bridge the gap between bodies using a combination of Sith sorcery and cloning technology. It was crude compared to what she'd done with the Hex, but the underlying principle was similar, imposing consciousness onto matter through sheer will. "Which?" The voice came from behind her, making Wanda spin with chaos magic blazing between her palms. But it was just another cultist, this one younger, female, without a mask. She descended into the pit with careful reverence. "Forgive the intrusion," the woman said. "I am Kess. I oversee the preservation systems. I felt disturbances in the dark side when you began your examination." "These aren't people anymore," Wanda said, gesturing to the sarcophagi. "They're prisoners. Conscious prisoners trapped in their own bodies for centuries or millennia. You call this preservation? It's torture." Kess's expression didn't change. "The Sith endure what others cannot. Pain is a tool. Suffering is a weapon." These lords understood that truth better than anyone. When the Emperor placed them in stasis, he gave them time. Infinite time to meditate on the dark side, to commune with the Force in ways impossible for the living. They are not suffering, they are evolving. Wanda wanted to argue, but she'd seen too much darkness in her own journey to completely dismiss the statement. She'd trapped an entire town in her grief-powered delusion and called it love. Who was she to judge what others might endure in pursuit of power? The older one, your leader, said you've been waiting for someone to resurrect them, Wanda said. Why? Why not just let them rest? Kes moved to Darth Bane's sarcophagus, placing her hand against the crystal with something approaching affection. Because the Sith are not meant to rest, she said simply. We are not the Jedi seeking peace and balance. We are evolution incarnate, the galaxy's immune system purging weakness and stagnation. When the Emperor died, truly died, the Sith died with him. The rule of two ended in failure. But these lords, she gestured to the pit, they represent different eras, different philosophies, different paths to power. Together, they could rebuild the Sith into something stronger than Palpatine's empire ever was. Or they could destroy everything, Wanda countered. I can feel their power. If I brought them back, what's to stop them from killing each other immediately? From turning on you? From consuming this entire galaxy in their hunger for dominance? Nothing, Kes admitted with a smile that bordered on ecstatic. That is the beauty of it. Chaos. True chaos. Not the stagnant order of the Republic or the tyranny of a single emperor. The Sith Lords would clash, would compete, would force the galaxy to evolve through conflict. And from that crucible, something magnificent would emerge. Wanda stared at the cultist, recognizing the fanaticism that had driven her own worst choices. Kes believed what she was saying with religious fervor. To her, galactic suffering was a necessary sacrament. I need to think, Wanda said, turning away from the younger woman. Alone. Of course, Kes replied, but while you think, consider this. The dark side chose you specifically. Not a Force sensitive, not a Sith apprentice. You, a being who manipulates reality itself through emotion and will. The Emperor could clone bodies, but he couldn't restore true resurrection. You can. Kes ascended the stairs, leaving Wanda in the pit with the dreaming dead. Wanda sat on the edge of Sidious's sarcophagus, head in her hands, trying to process everything. She was trapped on a planet of death cultists who wanted her to resurrect ancient dark lords in exchange for knowledge that might let her bring back her family. The ethical calculus was impossible. How many lives were Vision Billy's and Tommy worth? 100? 1,000? 1 billion? Her chaos magic pulsed with her emotional turmoil, and as it did, she felt the sarcophagi respond. The dark side energy sustaining them resonated with her power in a way that felt almost harmonious. Her reality, manipulation, and their death-defying preservation were two sides of the same coin, both attempting to impose will onto the universe's natural order. I don't know what to do, Wanda admitted to the silent corpses. I've already crossed so many lines. I've killed, I've enslaved, I've torn through universes hunting for something I can never have. But this, releasing you, would make all of that look like a minor transgression. Darth Bane's yellow eyes stared at her without blinking. You can't answer, Wanda continued, laughing bitterly. You're trapped. You're all trapped. And maybe that's exactly what you deserve. Maybe keeping you here, suspended forever, is the kindest thing this galaxy has ever done. She stood, wiping tears she hadn't realized were falling. But it's not my galaxy. I don't belong here. I don't understand your Force, or your Jedi, or your Sith. I just want my family back. Wanda climbed out of the pit and began exploring the rest of the chamber. The machinery surrounding the sarcophagi was incredibly complex, a fusion of technology and what she was beginning to recognize as Sith alchemy. Tubes connected to each body, circulating something that glowed with bioluminescent energy. crystals channeled dark side power into the preservation fields, and at the center of it all, a massive kyber crystal, corrupted, bleeding red light, served as the heart of the entire system. She could work with this. Her chaos magic could interface with the machinery, amplify the preservation fields, or reverse them, bring true life back to dead tissue. The Darkhold had taught her the theory. This equipment provided the practical application. Wanda's hands trembled as she placed them against the corrupted kyber crystal, feeling its power thrumming beneath her palms. One Sith Lord, just one, as a test, to see if it was even possible, to prove to herself and to the cultists that she could do what they asked before committing to anything larger. Darth Bane, the Ancient One, the founder of the Rule of Two. If she could resurrect him, control him, then maybe she could negotiate, use him as leverage to force the cultists to help her escape Exegol and take their knowledge with her. It was rationalization. Wanda knew that. But rationalization had sustained her through Westview, through the Darkhold's corruption, through murdering Reed Richards and Black Bolt and everyone else who stood between her and her children. What was one more compromise? Wanda's chaos magic flared crimson, intertwining with the dark side energy coursing through Exegol's foundations. The machinery began to hum with new frequency. In his sarcophagus, Darth Bane's corpse convulsed once. Then his heart began to beat. The machinery screamed. Alarms Wanda didn't know existed began wailing throughout the chamber as energy surged through systems designed for preservation, not resurrection. The corrupted kyber crystal blazed with light so intense it cast hard shadows across the walls, and Wanda's chaos magic poured into it like gasoline onto fire, crimson and red merging into something that had never existed in this galaxy before. Force energy and reality manipulation intertwined. Darth Bane's sarcophagus cracked down the center with a sound like thunder. Steam hissed from the fracture as preservation fluids drained away, and through the widening gap, Wanda saw ancient muscle tissue beginning to regenerate. Cells dividing at impossible speeds as her magic rewrote the fundamental state of his existence from dead to Ole. The cultists came running down the stairs, Kess and the scarred leader at the front, their expressions caught between religious ecstasy and terror. "She's doing it!" Kess screamed. "The prophecy!" "Contain the energy surge," the leader shouted to others. "If the kyber crystal fractures, the entire preservation system collapses." But Wanda barely heard them. She was locked into the resurrection now, her consciousness merged with Bane's corpse on a molecular level. She felt every cell reconstructing, every neural pathway reigniting, every memory preserved in dead tissue suddenly flooding back into a mind that had been silent for millennia. It was like watching the Hex expand across Westview again. Except this time she was bringing back something that should have stayed buried. The dark side rose with Bane's resurrection like a tidal wave. It crashed through the chamber with physical force, making the cultists drop to their knees in worship or agony. Wanda gasped as it washed over her, recognizing the sensation now. This was what had pulled her across dimensions. Not the force itself, but this corrupted, passionate, hungry aspect of it. The dark side wasn't just energy. It was conscious. It was alive. And it had wanted this. Darth Bane's eyes opened, no longer the yellowed preservation glow, but burning with genuine golden fire as the dark side flooded back into his restored form. His fingers twitched. His chest rose with the first breath in thousands of years. Wanda staggered back from the kyber crystal, her power finally releasing its grip on the machinery. The alarms began to quiet as systems stabilized, adjusting to the new reality she'd forced upon them. The sarcophagus exploded outward. Ancient stone and crystal shrapnel tore through the chamber. The cultists threw themselves flat. Wanda's chaos magic formed a shield instinctively, deflecting the debris. And from the wreckage, Darth Bane rose. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall, his body encased in armor that looked like it had been forged from darkness itself. The armor was part of him now, she realized, fused to his flesh during millennia of preservation. His face remained hidden behind an ancient mask, but through the eye slits, those golden flames burned with intelligence that made Wanda's skin crawl. Bane took one experimental step, then another. His movements were stiff at first, muscle memory returning to a body that hadn't moved in eons. But with each second, he grew more fluid, more purposeful. Then he spoke, and his voice was like grinding stone given speech. "I live." The cultists prostrated themselves immediately, foreheads pressed to the chamber floor. Kess was openly weeping with joy. The scarred leader's entire body trembled with religious fervor. But Wanda stood her ground, chaos magic crackling around her fists, meeting Bane's golden gaze with her own power blazing in her eyes. "You live because I allow it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her veins. "I brought you back. That means you answer to me." Darth Bane's head tilted slightly, studying her with the focus of a predator examining unfamiliar prey. He raised one armored hand, and Wanda felt pressure suddenly crushing down on her throat. Not physical hands, but something else entirely. The Force, she realized. He was using the Force to choke her without touching her. Wanda's chaos magic flared instantly, rewriting the reality around her throat. The invisible pressure vanished as she simply erased the Force effect from existence in her immediate vicinity. Bane's hand clenched tighter, pouring more power into the attack, but Wanda's reality manipulation held firm. For several seconds, they stood in deadlock, ancient Sith Lord versus multiversal witch, neither able to overcome the other. Then Bane lowered his hand. "Interesting," he rumbled. "You do not command the Force, yet you resist it. You are no Jedi, yet you destroyed my attack with contemptuous ease. What are you, Resurrector?" "Someone who's made too many mistakes to make another one easily," Wanda replied, not lowering her guard. "I brought you back as a test, to see if it was possible. That doesn't mean I'll resurrect the others, and it certainly doesn't mean I serve your purposes." Bane's attention shifted to the cultists still prostrating themselves. "Rise," he commanded, and they obeyed instantly. He studied them with visible disdain. "Sith Eternal. I know this title, the Emperor's fanatics, preserving corpses and prophecies while the galaxy moved on without you. How long have I been suspended?" "Over 1,000 years, Lord Bane," the scarred leader said, his voice thick with awe. "The rule of two you established has ended. The last Sith, Emperor Palpatine, was destroyed. We are all that remains." "The rule of two ended because it succeeded," Bane interrupted, his voice cutting through the explanation like a vibroblade. "It was meant to concentrate power through each generation, culminating in a Sith strong enough to destroy the Jedi Order entirely. If Palpatine fell, then he was weak, unworthy of the Sith legacy." The cultists exchanged uncertain glances, clearly not expecting their resurrected lord to immediately condemn their beloved emperor. Bane turned back to Wanda, his attention fully focused on her now. "You seek something," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Power this profound, used for resurrection. You want something badly enough to risk unleashing an ancient Sith Lord. What do you desire, witch?" Wanda hesitated, decades of trauma making her guard her vulnerabilities carefully. But something in Bane's tone suggested he already knew. The dark side, she was learning, fed on emotion. Her grief had drawn her here. Her desperation had powered the resurrection. Lying would be pointless. "My family," she admitted quietly. "My husband and children. They're dead, or they never truly existed. I'm not sure which is worse. I've searched across realities, learned forbidden magic, destroyed anyone who stood in my way. The cultists offered me Sith knowledge about conquering death if I resurrected you and the others." Bane was silent for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable behind the mask. "Love," he finally said, and the word dripped with something between contempt and understanding. "The Jedi would tell you attachment leads to the dark side. They're correct, though they misunderstand why. Attachment is not weakness, it is fuel. The most powerful Sith in history were driven by love, twisted into obsession, by loss transformed into hatred." He gestured to the remaining sarcophagi in the pit. Darth Revan fell because he loved. Darth Vader served Sidious because he loved. Even I, at the beginning, sought power to protect what I cherished. Love is not the weakness. Accepting loss is the weakness. Wanda felt something tighten in her chest. This monster, this ancient Dark Lord, understood her in ways even Doctor Strange hadn't. "Can your Sith knowledge bring them back?" she asked. "Truly back, not as illusions or corrupted versions?" "Perhaps," Bane said. "Darth Plagueis experimented with manipulating midi-chlorians to create life itself. The Emperor transferred his consciousness between cloned bodies. Darth Nihilus bound his essence to his armor. Each technique offers possibilities, though none guarantee what you seek." He stepped closer to Wanda, and despite her power, she felt small before his presence. "But I offer you a different path, Resurrector. You command reality itself, a power beyond anything the Force can achieve. Combined with Sith knowledge, you could do more than resurrect the dead. You could remake them, perfect them, ensure they never die again." "At what cost?" Wanda asked, though she already feared the answer. "Everything," Bane said simply. "The dark side demands sacrifice proportional to the power sought. To bring back 3 lives permanently, you would need to drain thousands. To make them invulnerable to death, you would need to consume entire worlds. The Emperor understood this. Why do you think he built the Final Order? He was preparing to harvest the galaxy's life force for his own immortality." Wanda's stomach turned. She'd known the cost would be high, but hearing it stated so bluntly made the reality inescapable. "I won't kill thousands for my family," she said firmly. "There has to be another way." "Then your family remains dead," Bane replied without cruelty, simply stating fact. "The universe is not charitable. It does not grant miracles without equivalent exchange. You already know this. You've made such exchanges before. Why do you hesitate now?" "Because I'm trying to be better," Wanda wanted to say. "Because I've seen what happens when I let grief make my choices. Because if I become a monster to resurrect my family, they won't recognize the woman who brings them back." But before she could voice any of that, the chamber's temperature suddenly plummeted. Frost formed on the walls in seconds. The cultists began gasping, their breath misting in the sudden cold. And from the pit, one of the other sarcophagi cracked. Darth Nihilus's prison shattered, and the void that had been a Sith Lord began to scream, a sound like reality itself tearing, like hunger given voice. Wanda's resurrection of Bane had destabilized the entire preservation system. The dark side energy she'd channeled through the corrupted Kyber crystal had rippled through all the sarcophagi, and now they were waking. All of them. "I propose a test," Darth Triya said, her blind gaze somehow piercing through Wanda's defenses. "The witch claims her magic comes from grief, from desperate love. Let us see if that love makes her strong or weak." Before Wanda could react, Triya's hand extended, and 3 lightsabers ignited simultaneously, not through touch, but through pure force manipulation. The crimson blades spun through the air toward Wanda with lethal precision, each one seeking a vital point. Wanda's chaos magic responded instantly. Reality stuttered around the lightsabers, and suddenly they weren't moving through space-time as weapons but as harmless light projections. They passed through her body without substance, without heat, simply illusions she'd rewritten into existence. But Traya had expected that. The real attack came from behind, Darth Sion's hatred-powered fist driving toward Wanda's spine with enough force to shatter bone. Wanda spun, hex bolts exploding from her palms. The crimson energy struck Sion's corpse body and should have blown him apart. Instead, his flesh simply regenerated, pulled together by the sheer force of his refusal to die. He'd sustained himself through agony for decades beyond death. Her chaos magic was just another form of pain to endure. Fascinating, Darth Plagueis murmured, observing from a safe distance. Her power affects reality, but cannot overcome conceptual existence. Scion is more idea than flesh now. You cannot destroy an idea through physical manipulation alone. Darth Nihilus drifted forward, and Wanda felt that crushing hunger return. This time she was ready, her chaos magic forming a reality barrier that should have been impenetrable. Nihilus reached toward the barrier and simply fed. The construct flickered as he drained the fundamental energy sustaining it, consuming not the magic itself, but the reality Wanda had imposed. She was fighting opponents whose powers operated on rules she didn't understand, in a place where those rules trumped her reality manipulation. Enough! Darth Bane's voice cracked like thunder, and the attacking Sith Lords paused. You've proven your point, Traya. She's powerful but not invincible. She can be tested. Now stop wasting time. The Sith Lords withdrew, though Wanda noticed they formed a loose circle around her, not actively attacking but clearly preventing escape. The witch has two options, Bane continued, addressing both Wanda and his fellow Sith Lords. First, she can resist, fight, attempt to undo what she's done, in which case we will study her, dissect her power, and ultimately break her until we understand how to replicate her reality manipulation through the Force. His golden eyes fixed on Wanda. Second, she can cooperate, share her knowledge freely, help us understand the intersection between her chaos magic and the dark side. In return, we grant her access to every Sith technique for conquering death, and we help her resurrect her family properly, permanently, without the half-measures and illusions she's attempted before. Wanda's mind raced. Every instinct screamed at her to fight, to tear through dimensions and escape, even if it meant leaving these monsters free in this galaxy. But Traya's test had revealed an uncomfortable truth. She couldn't simply overpower 13 Sith Lords simultaneously, not on Exegol, where the dark side itself reinforced their existence. You're offering me exactly what the cultists promised, Wanda said slowly. Knowledge in exchange for resurrection. But they wanted me to bring you back willingly. You're threatening me into compliance. We're being honest, Darth Revan said, his voice carrying an odd dual-tone quality. Darkness and light speaking in unison. The cultists would have betrayed you eventually, promised knowledge they couldn't deliver. We actually possess what you seek, and we're powerful enough that we don't need to lie about our intentions. Which are, Wanda challenged. Galactic conquest, Darth Malgus stated bluntly. The complete eradication of the Jedi Order. The subjugation of all Force-sensitive beings under Sith dominion. We're not pretending to be saviors or liberators. We are tyrants, and we embrace that identity. And you think I'll help you enslave a galaxy? Wanda asked, disgust dripping from every word. No, Darth Traya said softly. We think you'll help yourself, and in doing so, you'll give us the tools we need. Your morality is irrelevant to the dark side, child. Your intentions don't matter. Only your actions, only your choices. Darth Plagueis stepped forward, his elongated features arranged in something that might have been sympathy on a being less monstrous. I spent decades researching midi-chlorian manipulation, he said. I learned to influence the microscopic life forms that connect all living things to the Force. I could extend life, prevent death, even create life where none existed. But I could never achieve true resurrection. Once consciousness departed, once the Force released a being, I couldn't call them back. He gestured to Wanda with one long-fingered hand. You accomplished in moments what I spent a lifetime pursuing. You didn't just restart biological functions. You restored genuine consciousness, complete with memories and personality intact. That suggests your power operates at a level beyond midi-chlorian manipulation, beyond even the Force itself. Chaos magic, Wanda said quietly. It's not science. It's not something you can replicate through study. Perhaps, Plagueis conceded, but the intersection between your magic and the Force, that can be understood, that can be exploited. Imagine combining Sith alchemy with your reality manipulation. We could create life forms that shouldn't exist, resurrect entire armies, make ourselves truly immortal, not through cloning or essence transfer, but through fundamental rewriting of death itself. Wanda felt sick. She was listening to a monster describe how to become God, and the worst part was that she understood the temptation. She'd done exactly what Plagueis described in Westview, created life that shouldn't exist, twisted reality to serve her grief. The Sith Lords weren't offering her anything she hadn't already attempted. They were just being honest about the cost. If I refuse to cooperate, Wanda asked, then we begin the unpleasant process of extracting your knowledge through pain, Darth Xian said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood suffering intimately. I sustained myself through agony for decades. I know every technique for breaking a mind without destroying its usefulness. You would talk eventually. Everyone does. Or, Darth Traya added, we could be civilized. Wanda Maximoff, that is your name, yes? We know because the dark side knows. It read your grief when it pulled you here, sorted through your memories like files. We know about Vision, your android husband. We know about Billy and Tommy, your children who existed only within a hex you created and sustained through stolen life force. We know you've murdered innocents across multiple realities in pursuit of versions of your sons who could be real. Wanda's chaos magic flared with rage and shame. Stay out of my head. We're not in your head, Traya replied. We're reading the echoes you left in the dark side when you touched Exegol's power. Every emotion is data. Every memory is accessible to those who know how to look. This is why the Jedi fear attachment, because love leaves you vulnerable in ways mere flesh never could. Darth Bane raised a hand, silencing the others. Here is my final offer, Witch. Cooperate for 1 month. Help us understand the intersection between your power and the Force. In return, Plagueis will teach you his techniques for midi-chlorian manipulation. Nihilus will show you how to bind consciousness to matter even after biological death. I will instruct you in Sith alchemy. And Traya will help you understand the philosophical framework necessary to achieve what you desire without destroying yourself in the process. He stepped closer, his massive armored form imposing but his tone almost reasonable. 1 month. Then you're free to leave Exegol, take your knowledge, and attempt to resurrect your family. We won't stop you, we won't pursue you. What you do with that knowledge is your choice. We don't care if you bring back 2 children or commit genocide in the process. We simply want to understand your power before you go. And if I still refuse? Wanda asked. Then we spend a month breaking you instead, Bane said simply. And at the end of that month, we take your knowledge by force and leave you a shattered husk. The outcome for us is the same either way. The question is whether you emerge from this intact or destroyed." Wanda looked around at the 13 Sith Lords, each one representing a different philosophy of darkness, different approach to power, different method of causing galactic-scale suffering. They were offering her a deal, but it was a devil's bargain wrapped in the appearance of choice. But they were also offering her exactly what she'd come to Exegol seeking: real knowledge, genuine techniques, the kind of understanding that could let her bring back Vision, Billy, and Tommy permanently, without hex barriers or reality manipulation that would eventually collapse. "You'll teach me everything?" Wanda asked. "No tricks? No holding back critical information?" "We'll teach you everything we know about conquering death," Plagueis confirmed. "On my word as a Sith Lord who spent his life pursuing that very knowledge." "And after 1 month I can leave? No strings, no conditions?" "You have my word," Bane said, "though I suspect once you truly understand what we're offering, you won't want to leave. Power has a way of changing people's priorities." Wanda closed her eyes, thinking of Vision's face, of Billy and Tommy's laughter, of the family she'd lost and could never seem to properly grieve. She'd already crossed so many lines, already murdered so many innocents, already torn through universes, leaving destruction in her wake. What was one more compromise? 1 month, Wanda said, opening her eyes. "I'll cooperate for 1 month. But if you betray me, if you try to keep me here against my will, I'll tear through every one of you and burn Exegol to bedrock." Darth Triya smiled behind her blindfold. "We wouldn't expect anything less. Welcome to the Sith, Wanda Maximoff. Let your education in the dark side begin." The Sith Lord's fortress had chambers Wanda hadn't seen during her initial exploration. Laboratories filled with Sith alchemy equipment, meditation rooms saturated with dark side energy, libraries containing holocrons that whispered secrets in languages that bypassed conscious understanding and spoke directly to the subconscious mind. Darth Plagueis claimed the largest laboratory as his domain, and it was there Wanda found herself 3 days into her month of cooperation. "Midi-chlorians," Plagueis explained, gesturing to a holographic display showing microscopic organisms, "are the physical manifestation of the Force's connection to biological life. They exist in every living cell, communicating the will of the Force and allowing Force-sensitive beings to consciously manipulate that energy." Wanda studied the display, her chaos magic unconsciously analyzing the structures. "They're symbiotic, the organisms and the host cells. They've evolved together." "Precisely," Plagueis said, his tone carrying academic approval. "And through careful manipulation of midi-chlorian concentration and behavior, I learned to extend life indefinitely. I kept my master, Darth Tenebrous, alive for years beyond his natural span. I healed injuries that should have been fatal. I even began experimenting with creating life entirely, forcing midi-chlorians to generate consciousness where none existed." He pulled up another display, this one showing a disturbing image of what looked like a human fetus suspended in fluid covered in monitoring equipment. "The experiment was unsuccessful," Plagueis continued. "The body grew, but consciousness never properly formed. The Force resisted my attempts at creation, as if it recognized the abomination I was attempting. But you, Wanda, you succeeded where I failed. You created Billy and Tommy not through midi-chlorian manipulation, but through pure will imposed on reality." Wanda's throat tightened. "They weren't real. When I lost concentration, when the hex collapsed, they disappeared. Because you built them on unstable foundations," Plagueis said, moving closer. "You created their bodies, their personalities, their memories, but you didn't anchor them to anything permanent. They existed only as extensions of your power, sustained moment by your conscious will. The moment you faltered, they vanished. He placed one long-fingered hand on her shoulder, the touch clinical rather than comforting. But what if you could anchor them to the Force itself? Use my midi-chlorian knowledge to give them physical biology that sustains itself. Use your chaos magic to impose consciousness and personality. Create beings that are both real in the conventional sense and sculpted according to your specifications. That's... Wanda paused, trying to find the right word. That's playing God. Yes, Plagueis agreed without shame. That's exactly what it is. The Jedi would call it abomination. I call it evolution. The question is, what do you call it? Wanda stared at the failed experiment floating in its preservation tube, imagining Billy and Tommy in its place. Real bodies, real biology, but still sculpted according to her memories, her desires, as her grief-twisted perception of what her children should be. It wouldn't really be them, she said quietly. It would be copy, simulacra based on my imperfect memories. All children are simulacra of their parents' desires, Plagueis countered. Parents project expectations, mold behavior, shape personality. You're simply more honest about the process, more direct. Before Wanda could respond, an explosion of dark side energy rippled through the fortress, strong enough to crack the laboratory's stone walls. Plagueis' expression shifted to annoyance. Malgus and Cyan are fighting again. The warriors never could control their aggression. They found the source of the disturbance in one of the fortress's training chambers, a massive space carved from obsidian where Darth Malgus and Darth Sion were locked in brutal combat. Malgus's lightsaber carved smoking wounds through Sion's undead flesh, while Sion simply ignored the damage, his hatred-fueled body regenerating even as it was destroyed. The other Sith Lords watched from a safe distance, some with interest, others with boredom. They've been at this for an hour, Darth Revan explained to Wanda. Malgus believes Sion's immortality through hatred is inferior to proper Sith technique. Sion believes Malgus's reliance on a lightsaber shows weakness. Neither will concede. Why don't you stop them? Wanda asked. Why would we? Darth Traya replied from nearby. This is how Sith communicate when words fail. Let them purge their aggression now before it festers into genuine betrayal. Malgus roared in fury, calling on the Force to hurl Cyan through one of the obsidian walls. The undead Sith Lord crashed through stone and simply stood up on the other side, shambling back toward his opponent with inexorable patience. You cannot kill what refuses to die, Cyan rasped. I am pain given form. I am suffering immortalized. Your technique means nothing against true hatred. Wanda felt her chaos magic stirring in response to the violence, ancient instincts screaming at her to intervene, to stop the senseless destruction. But she forced herself to watch, to understand. This was Sith culture. This was what she'd agreed to study for a month. Darth Bane appeared beside her, his massive armored form casting Wanda into shadow. You're learning, he observed. Good. The Jedi would have rushed to separate them, preached about peace and harmony. You're beginning to understand that conflict is natural, necessary. It's how the strong distinguish themselves from the weak. It's how everyone gets killed, Wanda countered. Your rule of two, it ended with Palpatine's death because he had no true successor. Just endless backstabbing and betrayal. Palpatine's mistake was clinging to power past his natural span, Bane said. He should have been killed by a stronger apprentice, as tradition demanded. Instead, he used cloning and essence transfer to cheat death, growing weaker with each iteration. By the end, he was defeated by barely trained Jedi and a granddaughter who'd held a lightsaber for less than a year. Pathetic. Malgus and Sion's battle finally ended when both warriors collapsed from mutual exhaustion, their dark side energies temporarily depleted. The other Sith Lords lost interest and began dispersing back to their individual pursuits. "Come," Bane said to Wanda. "It's time I showed you Sith alchemy. Plagueis can teach you biological manipulation, but alchemy operates on different principles. We don't work with what exists. We transform it into what shouldn't exist." He led Wanda deeper into the fortress, to a chamber that reeked of sulfur and ozone. Alchemical equipment covered every surface: crucibles, distillation apparatus, crystalline structures that pulsed with dark side energy. In the center of the room, a circular platform held what looked like a normal stone. "Sith alchemy," Bane began, "is the art of infusing matter with the dark side until it transforms into something new. Sith swords that can block lightsabers, Sith amulets that grant their wearers unnatural powers, even living creatures mutated and twisted into weapons." He gestured to the stone on the platform. "Watch." Bane extended his hands, and dark side energy poured from his fingertips in visible waves of corruption. The energy struck the stone, and Wanda watched with horrified fascination as the rock began to change. Its surface darkened, grew crystalline, began pulsing with internal light that matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. After several minutes, Bane lowered his hands. The stone had transformed into something that was no longer quite rock. It radiated malevolence, and Wanda's chaos magic recoiled from its presence instinctively. "This is now a focus stone," Bane explained. "Anyone holding it would feel their connection to the dark side amplified tenfold. But it would also corrupt them, slowly transforming their mind and body into something more aligned with Sith philosophy. The stone and the user would merge over time, becoming a hybrid of flesh and dark side crystal." "That's horrific," Wanda said. "That's power," Bane corrected. "And you already understand the principle. When you created your hex over Westview, you infused an entire town with your chaos magic, transforming it into something that matched your grief-twisted desires. You performed alchemy on a massive scale without even realizing it." Wanda wanted to argue, but couldn't. He was right. The hex had been alchemical transformation, taking a normal town and rewriting it into a sitcom nightmare that served her need for family. "The difference," Bane continued, "is that you relied on constant conscious effort. Your hex collapsed when your will faltered. Sith alchemy creates permanent transformation. Once the dark side is infused into matter, it remains changed forever." He picked up the corrupted stone, studying it with satisfaction. "Now, imagine applying this technique to resurrection. Plagueis can teach you to create biological life. I can teach you to infuse that life with permanent dark side energy, ensuring it never fades, never weakens, never dies. Combined with your reality manipulation, you could create perfect, immortal versions of your family." "Perfect according to my specifications," Wanda said bitterly, "which means they wouldn't really be Vision, Billy, and Tommy. They'd be what I wanted them to be, dolls wearing their faces." "And is that worse than them being dead?" Bane asked. "Is imperfect existence inferior to non-existence?" Wanda had no answer. She'd already chosen imperfect existence in Westview, already decided that her illusion family was preferable to genuine grief. How was what Bane proposed any different? In another part of the fortress, Darth Nihilus drifted through empty corridors, his hunger temporarily sated by feeding on the ambient life force of Exegol's cultists. The Void Sith had found Wanda's presence intriguing. Her chaos magic radiated energy in patterns he'd never encountered, and he wondered what would happen if he tried to consume it. Would her reality manipulation fill the emptiness that defined his existence? Or would it simply be more food, consumed and forgotten like every other Force-sensitive being he'd devoured? Nihilus paused outside the alchemy chamber, his eyeless mask somehow perceiving Wanda through solid stone. The hunger stirred within him, patient but insatiable. Soon, he thought in concepts rather than words. Soon I will know if she can satisfy what cannot be satisfied. Back in the chamber, Wanda felt that attention like ice water down her spine. She spun toward the door, chaos magic blazing, but found nothing there. "Nihilus watches you," Bane said casually. "He watches everyone. The Lord of Hunger is always calculating what would happen if he fed. I've warned him that consuming you would likely result in his permanent destruction. Your chaos magic would tear him apart from the inside. But hunger doesn't always listen to reason." "Comforting," Wanda said, not lowering her guard. "You're safe for now," Bane assured her. "Nihilus knows that studying you alive is more valuable than consuming you dead. But once our month ends, once you attempt to leave," he shrugged. "I cannot guarantee his restraint." Wanda realized with sinking dread that the Sith Lord's promise to let her go was probably genuine. They simply couldn't guarantee she'd survive the leaving. 13 ancient dark side users, each with their own agenda, their own hungers, their own definitions of honor and betrayal. She'd made a deal with monsters, and monsters rarely kept their word unless it served them. 2 weeks into her month of cooperation, Wanda sat in meditation with Darth Treya in a chamber that existed in perpetual twilight. The blind Sith Lord had insisted that understanding the philosophical framework of the dark side was as crucial as mastering its techniques. "The Jedi teach that the Force has a will," Treya said, her voice soft but carrying absolute authority. "That it guides those who listen, that it seeks balance between light and dark. This is their greatest delusion." "And the Sith believe differently?" Wanda asked. Her eyes closed as she tried to sense the dark side energy Treya claimed permeated everything. "The Sith understand that the Force is a tool, nothing more. It has no more will than a lightsaber or a blaster. What the Jedi perceive as the Force's guidance is simply their own subconscious desires reflected back at them. The dark side is honest about this. It amplifies what you already are, your passions, your desires, your hatreds. It doesn't pretend to make you better, it makes you more." Wanda felt something shift in her perception. For a moment, she sensed what Treya described, a vast ocean of energy that responded to emotion, to will, to passionate intent. It wasn't good or evil, it simply was, like gravity or electromagnetism. The moral weight came from how beings chose to use it. "Your chaos magic operates on similar principles," Treya continued. "You impose your will on reality, and reality bends. The stronger your emotion, the more profound the change. In Westview, your grief was so overwhelming that you rewrote an entire town. Here on Exegol, your desperate hope for resurrection brought back 13 Sith Lords. Do you see the pattern? My emotions have consequences," Wanda said quietly. "The stronger I feel, the more dangerous I become." "No," Treya corrected. "Your emotions have power. Danger is simply what those too weak to understand that power call it. The Jedi would tell you to suppress your emotions, to find peace and serenity. But you've tried that, haven't you? After Westview collapsed, after you fled to that temple on Mount Wundagore, you tried to be better, to control yourself. And what happened?" Wanda's hands clenched. "The Darkhold corrupted me, made me worse. The Darkhold showed you the truth," Treya said. "That suppressing your grief didn't eliminate it. It festered, grew stronger in darkness, until it exploded outward across universes. You murdered the Illuminati not because you were corrupted, but because you finally stopped pretending you were anything other than a mother willing to burn worlds for her children." The words hit like physical blows, but Wanda couldn't deny their accuracy. "The dark side doesn't make you evil," Treya continued. It makes you honest. It strips away the comfortable lies we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of. You've already embraced that honesty, whether you admit it or not. The question is, what will you do with it? Before Wanda could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the fortress. Not the mechanical warnings from when she'd first resurrected Bane, but something else. Force-sensitive alerts that bypassed technology and spoke directly to those who could hear them. Treya's blind expression shifted to something approaching concern. "We have visitors," she said, standing with fluid grace. "Jedi." Wanda followed Treya to the fortress's main observation chamber, where the other Sith Lords were already gathering. Through massive transparasteel windows, she could see ships descending through Exegol's perpetual storm sleek fighters and a modified light freighter that looked like it had seen better decades. "Rey," Darth Bane said, his voice carrying grim recognition. "The scavenger who killed Sidious. I've studied the records the cultists preserved. She's more powerful than she should be, the last Skywalker and the last Palpatine. Bloodlines merged into one being. And she's brought friends." Wanda watched as the ships landed on the fortress's exterior platform. From the freighter emerged a woman in simple Jedi robes, Rey, presumably along with a dark-skinned man carrying a lightsaber and what looked like a protocol droid. The fighters disgorged resistance pilots, who immediately began establishing a perimeter. How did they find Exegol? Darth Plagueis wondered aloud. The Wayfinders were destroyed. The hyperspace routes were lost. This world should be unreachable. "The Force guided them," Darth Revan said, his dual-toned voice carrying certainty. "The light side sensed the dark side's resurgence and showed them the path. This was inevitable the moment we returned to life. Then we destroy them," Darth Malgus growled, his hand already moving toward his lightsaber. "One Jedi and a handful of pilots against 13 Sith Lords. This will be a massacre." "No," Darth Bane commanded. "This is an opportunity. Let them come. Let them see what they face." Fear is a more useful weapon than immediate violence. The Sith Lords took positions throughout the fortress's entrance hall, not hiding, but arranging themselves like a dark side pantheon receiving supplicants. Wanda stood slightly apart from them, uncertain of her role in whatever was about to unfold. The massive doors ground open, and Rey entered with her companions. She'd aged since defeating Palpatine, no longer the uncertain scavenger from the records, but a woman carrying the weight of rebuilding an entire Jedi Order. Her lightsaber hung at her hip, yellow blade still concealed but ready. Rey's eyes widened as she took in the assembled Sith Lords. Her hand moved instinctively toward her weapon. "Don't," Finn said beside her, though his own hand trembled near his lightsaber. "There are too many. We need to understand what's happening first." Rey's gaze swept across the Sith Lord's Bane's imposing armor, Treya's blind serenity, Nihilus's void existence, Plagueis's calculating intelligence, before finally landing on Wanda. Recognition flickered in her eyes, though not of identity. Recognition of something other, something that didn't belong. "You're not from this galaxy," Rey said, addressing Wanda directly. "I can feel it. The Force. It doesn't know what to make of you." Wanda straightened, chaos magic crackling defensively around her clenched fists. "I'm not part of this. I'm not with them. She resurrected us," Darth Bane interrupted, his voice cutting through Wanda's denial. "Wanda Maximoff, a witch from beyond the stars, commanding power that exists outside the Force's framework. She tore through dimensions, seeking knowledge about conquering death, and Exegol's dark side pulled her here. She restored us to life 2 weeks ago, and now she studies our techniques in exchange for knowledge that might let her resurrect her own family." Rey's expression shifted from shock to horror. "You brought them back. You resurrected the Sith Lords. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," Wanda said quietly, refusing to look away from Rey's accusation. I made another mistake. I seem to specialize in those. A mistake that will cost billions of lives, Rey said, her voice hard. These beings have committed genocides. They've destroyed worlds, enslaved entire species, twisted the Force itself into a weapon of suffering. And you just brought them back? I was trying to save my family, Wanda shouted, her grief and guilt finally exploding outward. I've lost everything. My husband, my children, my entire universe. I came here looking for answers, and these monsters offered me exactly what I needed. At the cost of galactic freedom, Finn said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd fought too long for liberation to accept its loss. We just defeated the Emperor. We just freed the galaxy from Sith tyranny. And now the true Sith have returned, Darth Treya interrupted smoothly. Not Palpatine's pale imitation of our philosophy, but the genuine article. 13 lords representing thousands of years of dark side mastery. Tell me, Rey Skywalker, or should I say Rey Palpatine, how do you intend to face us? Rey's hand finally drew her lightsaber, the yellow blade igniting with a snap hiss that echoed through the chamber. Finn's blue blade followed a moment later. The Resistance pilots behind them raised blasters, though everyone present knew conventional weapons would be useless against Force users of this caliber. The Sith Lords simply watched, none of them drawing weapons or showing visible concern. We faced impossible odds before, Rey said, her voice steady despite the fear Wanda could see in her eyes. We'll do it again. The Force is with us. The Force is with everyone, Darth Revan said, his dual-toned voice almost sympathetic. Light, dark, these are just perspectives, philosophies. The Force itself doesn't choose sides, it simply exists, and the strong impose their will upon it. Then we'll prove we're stronger, Rey said, though her voice wavered slightly. Darth Bane laughed a sound like grinding stone that held no humor. You are strong, Rey, perhaps the strongest Jedi since Luke Skywalker himself. But you are one, we are 13, and more importantly, he gestured to the Sith eternal cultists who had begun filing into the chamber, drawn by the disturbance. We have an army of believers who've waited decades for our return. While you struggle to rebuild a Jedi Order from nothing, we inherit a fully functional cult, complete with Sith technology, ancient knowledge, and absolute devotion. Rey's blade wavered. Then why haven't you attacked? If you're so powerful, why are you still on Exegol? Why haven't you already begun your conquest? The Sith Lords exchanged glances, and Wanda saw something she hadn't expected. Disagreement. For all their power, they hadn't reached consensus on their next move. Because unlike Palpatine, we're not fools, Darth Plagueis said finally. The Emperor announced his return with fleet deployments and ultimatums. He gave the galaxy time to unite against him. We will be more subtle, more patient. We'll rebuild the Sith, not as a singular empire, but as a philosophy that spreads through cracks in your new republic, through disaffected Force sensitives, through those who see the Jedi's restrictions as chains rather than wisdom. We'll corrupt from within, Darth Treya added. Turn your own students against you. Show them that the dark side offers freedom, power, passion, everything the Jedi deny. By the time you realize what's happening, half your order will be ours. Rey's expression hardened with determination. Then I'll destroy you now, before you have the chance. She launched forward, her lightsaber blazing, and Finn moved with her. The Resistance pilots opened fire. For a moment, the chamber erupted into chaos. Then Darth Nihilus simply raised one hand. The Void Sith's hunger expanded outward like a tidal wave of absence. Rey's Force connection flickered as Nihilus began feeding on the ambient life energy in the chamber. The Resistance pilots collapsed, drained. Even Finn stumbled, his lightsaber extinguishing as his strength abandoned him. Only Rey remained standing, her her connection to the Force bolstered by both Skywalker and Palpatine bloodlines. But even she fell to one knee, gasping. "Stop!" Wanda screamed, her chaos magic exploding outward. The crimson energy struck Nihilus's hunger field like a hammer, and for the first time since his resurrection, the Void Sith recoiled. Wanda's reality manipulation didn't just resist his draining, it inverted it, forcing life energy back into those he'd been consuming. The Resistance pilots gasped back to consciousness, Finn's lightsaber reignited, and Rey stood, staring at Wanda with confusion and desperate hope. "Leave," Wanda said, her voice resonating with multiversal authority. "Take your people and go. I'll keep the Sith Lords occupied long enough for you to escape." "We can't just leave you here," Rey began. "Yes, you can," Wanda interrupted. "Because I'm the only reason these monsters exist. I brought them back. That makes them my responsibility. Now, go." Rey hesitated for only a moment before her tactical training overrode her heroic instincts. She grabbed Finn's arm, and together they began retreating toward the entrance, supporting the weakened Resistance pilots between them. The Sith Lords didn't pursue. They simply watched with varying expressions of interest as their prey escaped. "Fascinating," Darth Plagueis murmured. She chose to save enemies over preserving her chance at freedom. The capacity for self-sacrifice hasn't been corrupted out of her yet. "It will be," Darth Traya said confidently. "Give her time, give her loss. Everyone breaks eventually." Wanda maintained her defensive barrier until Rey's ships lifted off and vanished into Exegol's storm. Only then did she lower her hands, chaos magic still crackling around her fingertips as she faced the Sith Lords. "You let them go," she said, accusation heavy in her voice. "You could have stopped them, killed them, but you let them go." "Of course we did," Darth Bane replied. "Dead martyrs inspire resistance. Living witnesses spread fear. Rey Skywalker will return to her fledgling Jedi Order with stories about 13 resurrected Sith Lords and a witch powerful enough to resurrect ancient evils. She'll speak of how easily we dominated them, how helpless they were. Every Force sensitive in the galaxy will hear those stories and wonder, is the light side truly strong enough to protect us?" Wanda felt sick. She'd thought she was saving Rey. Instead, she'd played perfectly into the Sith Lord's strategy. "You manipulated me," she said quietly. "We showed you who you are," Darth Traya corrected. "You saved Rey not because you've chosen the light side, but because you're still clinging to the delusion that you can be both powerful and good, that you can resurrect the dead without becoming death, that you can rewrite reality without consequences." Traya drifted closer, her blind gaze somehow more penetrating than normal sight. "Your month is nearly finished, Wanda Maximoff. You've learned what we promised to teach Plagueis's midi-chlorian manipulation, Bane's alchemy, Nihilus's binding techniques, Revan's balance between extremes. You have everything you need to resurrect your family. So why do you hesitate?" "Because I've seen what you are," Wanda said. "I've watched you plan galactic conquest like it's an academic exercise. I've felt Nihilus's hunger, witnessed Scion's hatred, studied Plagueis's amoral experimentation. You're monsters. And if I use what you've taught me, if I bring back Vision and my children using Sith techniques, what does that make them?" "Alive," Darth Bane said simply, "which is more than they are now." Before Wanda could respond, a distortion rippled through the chamber. Not Force energy, not chaos magic, but something else. Reality itself stuttered, and suddenly Wanda felt a presence she'd hoped never to encounter again. The Darkhold's echo, still inside her, still whispering. "No," she breathed, staggering backward. "I destroyed the Darkhold, every copy across every universe." Wong confirmed. "The Darkhold was never just a book," Darth Traya said, her tone carrying dark satisfaction. "It was concentrated corruption given form, and you, dear child, spent months saturated in its influence. Did you truly think destroying the physical copies would purge it from your soul? The Sith Lords had known. They'd sensed the Darkhold's residue within her from the moment she resurrected Bane, and they'd been cultivating it, feeding it with dark side philosophy, strengthening the corruption she'd thought she'd escaped. The Darkhold promised you could have your children across any reality, Treya continued. It showed you versions of Billy and Tommy where you were their mother, where you were happy. But those were lies. Those children belong to other Wandas. What we offer is truth. Create your children here. Use Sith knowledge to make them real, permanent, immortal. They'll be yours completely, shaped by your love and sustained by your power. Wanda's chaos magic blazed crimson, but beneath it she felt darker currents. The Darkhold's corruption intertwining with Sith teachings, her grief merging with dark side philosophy, boundaries dissolving between what she was and what these monsters wanted her to become. I won't, she said, though her voice wavered. I won't use your techniques to create mockeries of my family. Then you'll die here. Darth Nihilus communicated not through words, but through projected hunger that crashed against Wanda's mind. Alone, broken, having accomplished nothing but unleashing evil, you're too weak to stop. She's not weak, a new voice said from the chamber entrance. Everyone turned to see a figure standing in the doorway, a woman in blue robes, her hands glowing with golden energy that looked nothing like the Force or chaos magic. She was Dr. Christine Palmer, but not the one from Wanda's universe. This was the one from the Illuminati reality, the one who'd tried to help Wanda before Wanda had murdered that universe's version of herself. How did you get here? Wanda gasped. America Chavez, Christine replied, stepping into the chamber with remarkable courage given the 13 Sith Lords watching her. She's been tracking you across dimensions, trying to understand what pulled you out of our universe. When your chaos magic signature appeared in this galaxy, she opened a portal and sent me through, she thought. She hoped you might listen to someone you hadn't completely destroyed. Wanda felt tears burning in her eyes. I killed you. In your universe, I killed you, and America, and you killed another Christine Palmer, Christine interrupted gently. I'm alive. America is alive. And we're here to offer you one final choice before you cross a line you can't uncross. The Sith Lords stirred with interest. Darth Plagueis moved closer, studying Christine with scientific fascination. More dimensional travelers, he said. How delightful. Tell me, Doctor, what medical knowledge do you possess? I'd be fascinated to compare your universe's understanding of biology with our midi-chlorian research. Christine ignored him, her attention fixed entirely on Wanda. You're standing at a precipice, she said. These Sith Lords are offering you exactly what the Darkhold promised: power to resurrect your family. But using their techniques means creating children who never existed, giving them false memories, binding them to you through dark magic that will corrupt everything they are. Is that really what Vision would have wanted? Is that what Billy and Tommy deserve? They deserve to exist, Wanda shouted, her grief finally exploding fully. They deserve to live and laugh and grow old. They deserve more than being erased like they never mattered. They mattered, Christine said softly. They mattered to you. They mattered to everyone in Westview who remembers the children who helped them, who played in the streets, who brought joy even inside your hex. They existed, Wanda, briefly, imperfectly, but they existed. Nothing can take that away. Brief existence isn't enough, Wanda whispered. It's all anyone gets, Christine replied. Every parent watches their children grow up and change and eventually leave. Every spouse knows their partner won't be there forever. Love is defined by its impermanence. The Sith are offering you immortal puppets. I'm offering you the chance to honor what you had by letting it be enough." Darth Treya laughed, a sound like silk over broken glass. "How touching. The Doctor offers acceptance and peace. How very Jedi of her. But she's missing the fundamental point. Wanda doesn't want peace. She wants her family back, and we can give her that." Treya extended her hand toward Wanda, and in her palm appeared a small vial containing glowing liquid concentrated midi-chlorians mixed with Sith alchemical compounds. "One injection," Treya said, "into your own body. This formula will allow you to become pregnant with children who are biologically yours, but shaped by your chaos magic. You won't be creating puppets, you'll be birthing actual children who carry your DNA and Vision's synthesized genetic markers. They'll grow naturally, develop their own personalities, live genuine lives. All we've done is provide the biological framework your reality manipulation needs to make them permanent." Wanda stared at the vial, her entire world narrowing to that single point. Real children, not hex constructs, not illusions. Biological offspring who would be truly hers, who would grow and change and eventually not need her anymore. Isn't that what she'd always wanted? Isn't that why Westview had felt so hollow, because deep down she'd known Billy and Tommy were just extensions of her magic? "Wanda, don't," Christine pleaded. "That formula is corrupted. Anything born from it will carry the dark side's taint. Your children will be real, yes, but they'll be twisted toward darkness from their first breath. Is that really better than letting them rest in peace?" "They'll be alive," Wanda said, her hand reaching toward the vial. "That's all that matters. They'll be alive, and I can guide them, protect them, teach them." "Teach them what?" Christine interrupted. "How to murder across universes, how to enslave entire towns, how to resurrect ancient evils. What exactly will you pass on to these children, Wanda? Your grief? Your corruption? Your inability to accept loss?" The words struck like physical blows, but Wanda's hand didn't stop reaching. Her fingers closed around the vial, and in that moment, she felt the Darkhold's echo surge triumphantly through her consciousness, merging fully with the Sith Lord's dark side corruption, two sources of darkness becoming one, transforming her into something that existed between universes, a nexus of chaos, magic, and the Force, grief and hatred, love and obsession. The chamber filled with crimson and black energy as Wanda's transformation completed. Her Scarlet Witch crown manifested, but now it was edged with darkness that seemed to absorb light. Her eyes blazed with power that made even the Sith Lord step back cautiously. "I accept your offer," Wanda said, her voice resonating with multiversal and dark side authority combined. "I'll use your techniques. I'll create my family." Christine's expression crumbled into heartbreak. "Wanda, please." But Wanda was already opening a dimensional portal with one hand while injecting the Sith formula with the other. The corruption flooded her system, rewriting her biology to accept the impossible chaos magic and midi-chlorians merging, creating the potential for life that shouldn't exist. "Magnificent," Darth Plagueis breathed. "She's become something entirely new. Not Sith, not Witch, something beyond both. She's ours," Darth Treya said with satisfaction. "Whether she admits it or not, she's chosen the dark side. She'll birth children who will grow to become our weapons, our tools, our bridge between her chaos magic and the Force." Wanda heard their words but didn't care. She had what she needed: the knowledge, the formula, the power, and she was leaving. The portal expanded, showing not her original universe but somewhere else, an uninhabited world in this galaxy where she could hide, gestate, bring her family back without interference. "Wait," Darth Bane commanded. "Our agreement specified 1 month. You still owe us 3 days." Wanda turned, her transformed power blazing. "Then consider this my resignation. I'm taking what you taught me and leaving." Try to stop me, and I'll erase this entire fortress from reality." For a moment, violence hung in the air like a drawn blade. 13 Sith Lords versus one Chaos Witch corrupted by both Darkhold and Darkside. Then Darth Bane laughed, genuinely amused rather than threatening. "Go," he said. "Create your children. Raise them as you see fit. But know this, Wanda Maximoff, children grow. They ask questions. They seek their own paths. And when your sons inevitably wonder about the power that created them, when they discover the Sith techniques woven into their very existence, they'll come seeking us, and we'll be waiting." Wanda stepped through the portal without responding. Christine tried to follow, but the dimensional gateway sealed before she could reach it, leaving her trapped on Exegol with the Sith Lords. The chamber fell silent. "What now?" Darth Malgus finally asked. "Now," Darth Traya said, "we wait. We've planted a seed that will grow into exactly what we need. In the meantime, we begin our infiltration of the New Republic. Slowly, patiently, the way true Sith should have operated all along." She turned to Christine Palmer, still standing frozen by the sealed portal. "As for you, Doctor, you're going to help us understand dimensional travel, voluntarily or otherwise." The uninhabited world Wanda chose existed on the far edge of the unknown regions, a forest planet with twin moons and perpetual twilight. No settlements, no sentient species, just ancient trees and crystalline caves that resonated with the Force in ways she was only beginning to understand. She built her sanctuary in one of those caves, using chaos magic to reshape stone into a dwelling that felt nothing like Westview's suburban nightmare or Exegol's dark fortress. Something in between, a home carved from both hope and corruption. 3 months passed. Her body changed as the Sith formula worked its impossible magic, combining with her chaos magic to create life where none should exist. She felt them growing inside her, not Billy and Tommy reborn, but something new, something that carried echoes of Vision's synthetic patterns and her own genetic code, merged through dark-side alchemy into biological reality. She tried not to think about what the Sith Lords had said, tried not to imagine her children seeking out those monsters, learning the techniques that had created them. But late at night, when the twin moons cast shadows that looked like reaching hands, she wondered if Darth Bane had been right. If children were just extensions of their parents' choices, then what would hers become? What could they become? Birthed from grief and Sith corruption, the galaxy, meanwhile, descended into chaos. Rey returned to her nascent Jedi Order with warnings about the resurrected Sith Lords, but without proof beyond her testimony. Some believed, most didn't. The New Republic had just finished celebrating victory over Palpatine. They weren't ready to accept that 13 Sith Lords now plotted their destruction. Worse, Force-sensitive individuals began disappearing across the galaxy. Some vanished from their beds. Others simply walked away from their families, drawn by whispers in the Force that promised power, freedom, passion. The Jedi Order investigated but found no evidence, no pattern. They didn't realize the Sith Lords were recruiting. Darth Traya personally visited each prospect, appearing in their dreams, speaking through meditation, offering alternatives to the Jedi's rigid philosophy. She didn't promise easy power or quick gratification. She offered truth, that the Force didn't choose sides, that passion was as valid as peace, that the Jedi's restrictions were chains rather than wisdom. Many refused, but enough accepted, and those who accepted were transported to Exegol, where the other Sith Lords waited to begin their training. A new Sith Order was forming, not through conquest or declaration, but through seduction, through offering disillusioned Force sensitives exactly what they craved. Darth Plagueis, meanwhile, worked with Christine Palmer voluntarily to her own surprise. The doctor had expected torture, forcible extraction of knowledge. Instead, Plagueis engaged her as a colleague, genuinely interested in comparing medical understanding across universes. His questions were disturbing in their implications, but his methodology was rigorous. "You understand cellular biology in ways we've never explored," Plagueis said during one of their sessions. "Your universe developed technology to manipulate genetics directly, while we rely on the Force to influence midi-chlorians. But if we combined approaches, you'd create designer organisms optimized for Force sensitivity," Christine finished, unable to hide her horror. "You'd breed weapons. We'd breed evolution," Plagueis corrected. "The Force-sensitive population has stagnated for millennia. The Jedi's breeding restrictions, the Sith's rule of two, both limited genetic diversity. But with your knowledge and my techniques, we could accelerate Force-sensitive evolution by thousands of years in a single generation." Christine wanted to refuse, to resist, to maintain her moral high ground. But she was a scientist as much as a doctor, and the implications fascinated her despite the ethical nightmare they represented. She told herself she was gathering intelligence, learning their plans so she could eventually escape and warn someone, Rey, the New Republic, anyone who would listen. But deep down, she knew she was compromising, slowly, incrementally, the same way Wanda had compromised until corruption became indistinguishable from self. Darth Revan observed the growing Sith Order with conflicted feelings that reflected his dual nature. The dark side of his consciousness approved these recruits, showed passion, dedication, willingness to sacrifice everything for power. But the light side remnant whispered warnings. This path led to suffering, to endless cycles of betrayal, to a galaxy consumed by conflict. He brought his concerns to Darth Bane. "The rule of two existed for a reason," Revan said, his voice carrying its characteristic dual tone. "Too many Sith inevitably turn on each other. We're building an organization that will tear itself apart." "Perhaps," Bane acknowledged. "But consider this. Sidious's empire fell because it depended entirely on one individual. When he died, the infrastructure collapsed. We're building something more resilient, a philosophical movement rather than a political structure. Some of our recruits will betray us, some will kill each other, but the ideas will persist, the dark side will persist. Ideas that justify galactic suffering," Revan said quietly. "Ideas that acknowledge suffering is already present," Bane corrected. "The Jedi don't eliminate pain, they suppress it, hide it, pretend serenity can overcome reality. We're honest about what the galaxy is, a brutal place where the strong survive and the weak perish. Better to embrace that truth than pretend otherwise." Revan had no response. Both sides of his nature saw validity in the argument, and the internal conflict left him paralyzed. 4 months after leaving Exegol, Wanda gave birth, not in a medical facility, not with doctors present, just her and her chaos magic and the crystalline cave that had become her sanctuary. The labor was agonizing, made worse by the Sith formula burning through her system, forcing biological processes that shouldn't exist. But when she finally held them, when she looked into their eyes for the first time, all the pain vanished. Twin boys. Not identical to Billy and Tommy from Westview, but carrying echoes of their features, their essence. One had Vision's analytical eyes, the other had Wanda's stubborn jawline. Both radiated Force sensitivity so profound that the twin moons outside blazed brighter, responding to their birth. "Welcome," Wanda whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome to existence." She named them Billy and Tommy anyway, because they were hers. Because despite everything, the corruption, the compromise, the Sith techniques woven into their DNA, they were her children, and she would protect them from the monsters who'd made their existence possible. But even as she made that vow, Wanda felt the dark side stirring within her sons. Not evil, not malicious, but present. The Sith formula had worked exactly as promised. They were real, biological, growing children. but they carried the dark side in their very cells, midi-chlorians corrupted by Sith alchemy, potential waiting to be awakened. She could sense their futures branching paths where they became heroes, villains, something in between. Nothing was predetermined, but the tools for darkness were built into their foundation, ready to be discovered when they grew old enough to ask questions. Wanda held her children close and wept, unsure whether she was crying from joy or horror. Meanwhile, on Exegol, Darth Treya felt the Force ripple with new life. She smiled behind her blindfold, satisfied. "The seeds are planted," she said to Darth Bane. "Now we cultivate." The witch believes she's escaped us, that she can raise her children free from our influence. She doesn't understand that we're patient. Sith philosophy operates on timescales that exceed individual lifetimes. "How long before they come to us?" Bane asked. 15 years, Treya predicted. Maybe 20, when the boys reach adolescence and begin truly exploring their powers, when they discover abilities that terrify their mother, when they need teachers who understand what they are. That's when we'll reveal ourselves, not as conquerors or corruptors, but as mentors, as the only beings in the galaxy who can help them master the darkness they inherited. Bane nodded slowly. By then, she'll be desperate enough to accept any help. She'll tell herself she's protecting them, guiding them, maintaining control, but she'll be delivering them directly into our hands. The Sith Lord's recruitment continued, their philosophical infiltration spread, and in the unknown regions, Wanda Maximoff raised her children in isolation, desperately trying to be both mother and teacher to boys who carried darkness in their DNA. Rey sensed all of this through the Force, not specific details, but the general pattern, the dark side growing stronger, shadows lengthening across the galaxy, a threat emerging that made Palpatine's empire look like a rehearsal for something far worse. She intensified her Jedi recruitment, tried to build an order capable of facing what was coming, but for every Force sensitive she found, another disappeared into the shadows. For every student she trained, another walked away, drawn by whispers that promised alternatives to Jedi orthodoxy. The galaxy hung in balance, teetering toward a conflict that would make the Clone Wars look minor by comparison. And at the center of it all, a witch who'd resurrected the Sith Lords, 2 children born from grief and corruption, and 13 ancient dark side masters plotting galactic transformation. 10 years passed. Billy and Tommy grew strong, curious, powerful. Wanda taught them control, compassion, responsibility, but she couldn't teach them about the darkness inside themselves because acknowledging it meant acknowledging her choices. So she hid that truth, buried it beneath love and protection. The boys felt the darkness anyway, felt it calling to them through dreams they couldn't explain, felt it resonating in their midi-chlorians, whispering secrets about their origin. And on Exegol, the Sith Lords waited with inhuman patience, knowing that eventually, inevitably, Billy and Tommy would come seeking answers, knowing that when they did, Wanda's greatest fear would be realized. Her children would discover they were born not from love alone, but from a mother's willingness to compromise with monsters. The Sith's revenge wouldn't come through conquest or warfare. It would come through corruption of the next generation, through seeds planted a decade earlier, now ready to bloom into darkness that would consume everything Wanda had tried to protect. And there was nothing she could do to stop it except love her children fiercely and hope desperately, hopelessly, that love would be enough to overcome the corruption woven into their very existence. The Scarlet Witch's arrival in the Star Wars galaxy changed everything in ways no Force vision could have predicted. She resurrected 13 Sith Lords from their preserved deaths, unleashing ancient evil in exchange for knowledge that might restore her family. But the cost of that bargain extended far beyond her personal tragedy. Her children, Billy and Tommy, born from chaos magic and Sith alchemy, represented a new evolution of Force-sensitive life. Neither fully light nor dark, but something unprecedented. Beings who could potentially bridge the gap between her reality manipulation and the Force, creating possibilities that terrified both Jedi and Sith alike. The Sith Lords, meanwhile, transformed their resurrection into opportunity. Rather than immediately seeking conquest, they adopted a patient, insidious strategy. Philosophical infiltration, recruitment of disillusioned Force sensitives, and the slow corruption of the New Republic from within. They understood what Palpatine never grasped, that lasting power comes not from fear, but from offering people exactly what they crave. Rey and her nascent Jedi Order faced an impossible challenge: how to combat enemies who offered truth about the Force's nature, who acknowledged the validity of passion and emotion, who didn't hide behind platitudes about balance and peace. The Sith's honest embrace of darkness proved more seductive than the Jedi's complicated restrictions. And Wanda? She raised her children in hiding, trying desperately to be the mother they deserved, while knowing that every day brought them closer to discovering the darkness in their DNA. She'd made her choice on Exegol, chosen existence over purity, life over peace. Now she would spend the rest of her days wondering if that choice had damned not just herself, but the two people she loved most. The galaxy would never be the same. The Scarlet Witch had brought resurrection, and with it, questions that couldn't be answered through lightsabers or Force powers alone. What is the acceptable cost of love? Can corruption be overcome by good intentions? And when darkness is woven into your very existence, can you ever truly be free? These questions would define the coming decades. And somewhere on Exegol, 13 Sith Lords waited patiently for the answers to unfold exactly as they'd planned.